even though the Egyptian government is anti-Hamas because the Egyptian government is against everything that is Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas is part of Muslim Brotherhood, even though they're anti-Hamas and even though the Egyptian government has a relationship with Israel and they have a peace agreement with Israel, the anti-Israeli hate in Egypt is so much and the support for Hamas was so much after October 7th in Egypt that the government was too afraid not to give in to the crowd. So they want to appease them by going out, like they want to give in to the crowd by going out and hunting certain people that were supporting Israel or condemning Hamas. And you were one of the few people. However, do you think that most of the backlash against you, I suspect, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is not because you condemn Hamas, it's because you also supported Israel. Like if
Yes.
you had just said that Hamas did something wrong, but didn't also add to it that you support Israel, the backlash wouldn't be as severe as if. And why did you also? Let me know if I'm correct. And also, why did you have to add that? Like, why did you feel like you need to go beyond just condemning Hamas, but also show support for Israel? Can you explain that to us?
Sure, that's a great question. And I agree with you. I think what they saw as a crime, especially in the eyes of the Egyptian government, is that I said I support Israel. This is my crime in their eyes. And it's weird,
Mhm.
as you said, I mean, Armin, like Egypt and Israel has a peace treaty that has been in place have a peace treaty. They signed a peace treaty in the 1979, more than 40 years ago. And this peace
Mhm.
treaty has been in place for all this time, despite all the tensions, despite all the conflicts in the region. And in the past 10 years, we saw unprecedented economic and security cooperation between the two countries. Israel helped
Mhm.
Egypt get rid of Hamas terrorists, Hamas and the Islamic Jihad terrorists in Sinai. I mean, the Israeli military helped Egypt in that. Egypt and Israel cooperated together in the Eastern Mediterranean on gas exploration and exportation to Europe. And it was a very successful business that really helped the Egyptian economy in a tremendous way. So, keeping all this, and of course, above all, the Egyptian government, the current Egyptian leadership, the president of Egypt himself, President El Sisi, is a has his own fight against the Muslim Brotherhood, against Hamas. So it did not make any sense to me. I thought when I was making this interview at that time, I thought I'm already speaking in line with what the Egyptian government believes. Because
Mhm.
personally, I believe that Israel has always been a good neighbor and a good friend to Egypt. And if Egypt really and actually it I don't know why the Egyptian government cannot see that our national security, our economy are so interdependent on on Israel's well-being in terms of security and economy. If the Israeli security is good, Egypt's security will be good. If the Israelis economy is good, Egypt's economy will be good. Stability will serve everyone in the region, and Egypt particularly because it is the immediate neighbor of Israel. So, keeping all this in mind, you would think that the Egyptian government will be on the side of Israel naturally. But unfortunately, this was not the case. And the reason for that is that hatred towards Israel is so embedded in the Egyptian society and the Egyptian culture, and even in the military ideology in Egypt, that all the peace treaties, all the good relationship between the two countries in the past few years was not able to was
Mhm.
not able to remove this hatred. Because, I
Okay.
mean, actually, even this cooperation, even this episode of great cooperation between Egypt and Israel recently, from the Egyptian perspective, it was seen as a pragmatic cooperation, a pragmatic step to cooperate with Israel, not really as genuine peace. Even the peace treaty signed more than 40 years ago is seen by the Egyptians, by the Egyptian government, I mean, as a strategic agreement, a security agreement that prevents us from fighting with each other, but not really as something that we can rely on to cooperate with each other. And This is the difference. For Israelis, I know very well it is different. Israelis are taking it so seriously and taking peace with Egypt so seriously. But unfortunately, this is not the case in Egypt.
So why do you have a different opinion than other people, many people in Egypt, and why are you so passionate about having a good relationship with Israel and supporting Israel? What made you? Because this seems to be a major focus of your work. Can you explain why?
Actually, it has to do with something that happened about 20 years ago, or even more, when I was in my first year in university. You know, Armin, I grew up in a very conservative society where, in our mosques, every Friday there is a stable prayer to curse the Jewish people and to curse Israel. It's like that, and curse everyone who cooperates with them. So this is the prayer we hear in every Friday sermon. And not only that, in our media, all the time, in our TV shows, in our talk shows, in our political shows, they are cursing Israel day and night. In our schools, in my primary school, in the textbooks, they actually there is a lesson in the textbook book in primary school. I'm not sure if it is still the case until now, but at least in my time, and I was born, I mean, many years after the peace treaty was signed, and there was in my primary school textbooks a lesson about the Yom Kippur war with Israel, that of course is demonizing Israel in every way you can think of, I mean. And then after we take these lessons, they take us on the school bus, and they take us to a museum made specifically for the Yom Kippur War. And you spend the day in the museum, and actually all the day they are speaking to us about how bad is Israel. It killed our soldiers, it killed our people. So this is how they indoctrinate us, how we grow up thinking in such a very negative way about Israel. So it was natural for me in my first year in university to join the protests that were happening at that time, because it was around the time of the second intifada. I'm not sure if many people or many of your audience will remember this, but it was a very terrible time in the Middle East, suicide bombings. Also, it's very similar somehow to what's happening today in Gaza. So, and also the Hamas Israel war, and Hamas was relatively new at that time. People did not really attach it to radical Islamism at that time. Al Jazeera TV also was very new at that time, and they were showering us with footage from Gaza, people under the rubble and all this stuff. So it was natural for me at that time to join the protesters against Israel. And I did. I participated in some of the protests that were organized on my campus, just similar to all the brainwashed students you're seeing in American universities and European universities these days. So
I used to in our elementary school in Iran, we used to burn the flag of Israel. I remember doing that as a kid too. So yeah.
this is this is crazy, I mean, when you so I mean, it's very interesting. So I joined the protesters, and after 2 months in protesting, and feeling like, I'm fighting for a humanitarian cause, I'm doing something bigger than myself, things like that. And then one day, the people who were organizing the protest, so one day, the people who were organizing the protest in one sunny day in Cairo, they decided to burn some flags. And the people organizing the protests, by the way, are the Muslim Brotherhood. And they decided to burn some flags. So they started by burning the Israeli flag, which made sense because the protest is against Israel anyway. Then they burned the American flag, which did not make much sense to me because, well, America exists like tens of thousands of miles away from Egypt. Why would burning their flag make any difference in the Gaza crisis or for the Palestinian people? How burning the American flag will liberate Al-Aqsa Mosque? So I kept asking myself these questions. And then they burned the third flag. And this third flag was my own flag, the Egyptian flag. At that
Oh.
moment, Exactly. This was very shocking to me. So this was a very shocking moment for me. So I took a step back, very scared. I was 18 years old at that time. And I just said, okay, no, something wrong is happening here. So this is not acceptable. These people must be evil, must be dangerous, because if they don't respect my flag, the flag of the country they exist in, then there must be something wrong. So this was the moment I literally opened the box that I was stuck into for so long by religious rhetoric, by political narrative, and so on. And I decided to get out of this box and educate myself about Israel, about the Jewish people, about the Jewish culture, about also Islam and Islamism. I honestly, at that time, I almost lost my faith. I almost lost my belief in religion. And I started to educate myself once again about what this religion is, why these people are using religion to do these things. And then eventually I built the character that remained with me for the rest of my life. The new persona, the new person that's called Dalia, that remained with me until today, who is more tolerant, more understanding, uh, passionate about Muslim Jewish dialogue, passionate about Arab Israel peace. And this has been my life and my work since then.